southern wind whispers secrets through the ancient oaks of Jekyll Island, and the Spanish moss hangs like tattered curtains of the dead. This isolated barrier island off the coast of Georgia holds a history that is as opulent as it is terrifying. For decades, this land served as the winter playground for the wealthiest families in the United States, and names like Rockefeller and Morgan and Vanderbilt echoed through the halls. They built a paradise to escape the harsh northern winters, but they could not escape the clutches of mortality. The grandeur of the Jekyll Island Club Resort remains today, but the spirits of its founders have refused to leave their exclusive retreat. Visitors report the smell of cigar smoke in empty rooms and the sound of phantom footsteps pacing the wooden verandas. Imagine a place where 1/6 of the entire world's wealth was concentrated during the turn of the 20th century. The Jekyll Island Club was so exclusive that it was described as the richest, most inaccessible club in the world. These tycoons sought privacy and luxury, far removed from the prying eyes of the public and the press. They constructed massive cottages that were actually sprawling mansions, and a clubhouse that rivaled the finest hotels in Europe. Yet beneath the veneer of champagne toasts and croquet matches on the lawn, there existed a darker undercurrent. Tragedy and death did not discriminate based on bank accounts, and the island saw its share of sudden demises and heartbroken mourners. Now the laughter has faded, but the energy remains trapped within the cypress walls. The sun dips below the horizon and casts long, twisting shadows across the manicured lawns of the resort. As twilight bleeds into night, the atmosphere shifts from historical curiosity to palpable dread. This is not merely a hotel. It is a massive mausoleum of memories where the timeline between the living and the dead has blurred. Guests who check into the Sans Souci building or the main clubhouse often feel they are intruding on a private gathering that never ended. The air grows cold without warning, and the feeling of being watched is constant and oppressive. It is said that the original members loved this island so much that even death was not a strong enough force to evict them from their beloved cottages. One of the most enduring legends centers around the imposing figure of John Pierpont Morgan. The titan of industry was known for his love of cigars and his commanding presence, which demanded silence and respect. He favored the Sans Souci apartments, which was a structure built to accommodate members who wanted more privacy than the clubhouse offered. It is in these hallways that the pungent aroma of premium tobacco often manifests from nowhere. There is no smoking allowed in the resort today, yet the smell is unmistakable and thick. It drifts under door frames and hangs in the air at 4 in the morning, waking guests from a deep sleep. It is as if Morgan is still pacing the floor, planning his next acquisition while the world sleeps. The architecture of the resort itself seems designed to harbor spirits with its towering turrets and wrap around porches and endless corridors. The creaking of the floorboards is often dismissed as the settling of an old building, but the patterns suggest something more deliberate. Many staff members have reported seeing a gentleman in a tuxedo walking toward the dining room only to vanish when approached. This figure is believed to be a former member who died just before a grand dinner was to be served. He is stuck in a perpetual loop of anticipation, waiting for a meal that will never arrive. The dining room with its high ceilings and grand fireplace feels occupied even when it is completely empty of living souls. There is a particular room in the main clubhouse that belonged to the railroad magnate Samuel Spencer. Spencer was a man of precise habits, and he insisted on having his morning newspaper and coffee delivered at a specific time every day. His life ended tragically in a horrific train collision in the year 1906. It was a brutal irony for a man who made his fortune on the rails to die by them. Since his death, guests staying in his former suite report a disturbing morning ritual. They awake to find their personal items rearranged, or the sensation of someone sitting on the edge of the bed. It seems Spencer is still waiting for his morning news, unable to accept that the world has moved on without him. The tragedy of Samuel Spencer is not just a story of a haunting, but a testament to the sudden violence that often births a ghost. His death was instant and catastrophic, leaving his spirit confused and tethered to the last place he felt truly at peace. Witnesses have claimed to see a shadowy figure standing by the window of his suite, looking out over the river, as if watching for a train that will never come. The sorrow in the room is palpable, a heavy weight that presses down on the chest of anyone brave enough to stay there. Housekeepers have reported entering the room to clean only to find fresh indentations on the bedsheets and the pages of a magazine turning on their own. Beyond the main clubhouse lies the cottage known as the Dubignon Cottage, which dates back to the era before the Millionaires arrived. It stands as a reminder of the violent history of the island, involving duels and territorial disputes. The structure has a rustic appearance compared to the Gilded Age mansions, but its spiritual activity is far more aggressive. Guests have reported the sound of heavy boots stomping on the porch and the distinct sound of a pistol being cocked. It is believed that the restless spirit of a duelist who died on the grounds still patrols the area. He is guarding his territory against the northern invaders who bought the island and turned his home into a playground. The sprawling grounds of the resort are dominated by ancient oak trees that have witnessed centuries of human folly. Under the moonlight, the Spanish moss looks like gray hair hanging from the branches of the dead. It is beneath these trees that the ghost of a young bellman is often seen, The legend says he was a diligent worker in the 1920s who took great pride in his uniform. He is said to have died from a sudden illness in the staff quarters, but his dedication to his job kept him bound to the hotel. Guests arriving late at night have reported a young man in a vintage uniform offering to take their bags, only to dissolve into mist when they reach out to hand him their luggage. This phantom bellman is not a malevolent force, but his appearance is deeply unsettling to those who do not know the history. He appears solid and real with a polite smile and a cap pulled low over his eyes. It is only the coldness of the air around him and the lack of sound when he walks that gives him away. He is most often seen on the second floor of the main clubhouse, near the grand staircase. He stands at attention, waiting for orders from bosses who have long since turned to dust. His presence is a melancholic reminder of the class divide that existed even in death, as he continues to serve while the millionaire ghosts continue to leisure. Another prominent spirit is that of Lloyd Aspinwall, who was a wealthy merchant and a general in the New York National Guard. He was one of the founding members of the club and was instrumental in its creation. However, tragedy struck, and he died suddenly before the club officially opened its doors for the first season. He never got to enjoy the paradise he helped build. His ghost is said to haunt the Aspinwall cottage, which was named in his honor, but never occupied by him in life. He is seen walking the wrap-around porch at sunset, gazing out at the life he was denied. His figure is often described as wearing a Civil War-era uniform or formal evening wear. The resentment of General Lloyd Aspinwall is felt by many who visit the site of his cottage. Although the original structure is gone, the land retains his frustration. Visitors walking near the area report a sudden drop in temperature and a feeling of immense sadness. Some have even heard a man voice whispering about lost time and unfair fates. It is a haunting of unfulfilled potential, a spirit grounded by the sheer weight of disappointment. He patrols the grounds, ensuring that the standards of the club are maintained, even if he cannot participate in the festivities. He is the eternal guardian of a dream that he never lived to see. In the early morning hours, when the mist rolls in off the Jekyll River, the distinction between the past and present evaporates. This is when the ghost of the passer's cottage makes herself known. The story involves a bridge that once connected the island to the mainland, and a tragic accident involving a carriage. However, the more persistent rumor concerns a nanny who stayed in the cottages. It is said she lost a charge, a young child, to the dark waters of the river. Her grief was so consuming that it anchored her to the spot. Guests hear a woman weeping softly near the water edge, a sound that is carried by the wind and chills the blood. The weeping woman is not the only sorrowful female spirit on the island. There are tales of a bride who was jilted at the altar in the small chapel on the grounds. She fled into the night and was never seen again in the flesh. Her spirit, however, is said to return to the chapel on the anniversary of her failed wedding. Witnesses describe a figure in a white dress that glows with a pale luminescence. She stands at the altar with her head bowed in eternal prayer, or perhaps eternal shame. The air in the chapel becomes heavy with the scent of gardenias, which were the flowers in her bouquet. The Jekyll Island Club was a place of families and children, where a common sight running across the lawns. But the mortality rate for children in the 19th century was high, and the island has its share of child ghosts. One specific entity is a young boy who is often seen chasing a hoop and stick toy near the pool area. He wears knickers and a flat cap clothing that clearly places him in a bygone era. He laughs as he runs, but there is no sound to his laughter. He appears in photographs as a blurry streak or a strange orb of light hovering near the ground. He is a playful spirit, unaware that his playtime ended over a century ago. The pool area itself is a hotspot for paranormal activity, especially after the sun goes down. The water reflects the moonlight and seems to act as a portal for the entities. Staff members closing down the pool for the night have reported splashing sounds when the water is perfectly still. Wet footprints have been found on the dry concrete leading from the pool edge to the grass, where they simply vanish. It is as if the spirits of the past are enjoying a midnight swim, unaware that the living are watching. The atmosphere is not threatening, but it is incredibly eerie to witness the remnants of a party from 1910. As we move deeper into the dark history, we must consider the servants who made the luxury of the Millionaires possible. They lived in separate quarters and worked grueling hours to remain invisible. Their ghosts, however, are now just as prominent as their masters. In the kitchens, pots and pans have been known to crash to the floor when no one is in the room. Chefs have felt a hand on their shoulder, guiding them or pushing them out of the way. It is the spirit of a head chef who demanded perfection and is still trying to run his kitchen from the grave. He does not appreciate modern culinary shortcuts. The supernatural activity is not limited to visual apparitions and auditory hallucinations. There is a physical component to the hauntings at Jekyll Island. Guests sleeping in the Sans Souci have reported the sensation of being tucked in at night. The sheets are pulled up tight around their chins by unseen hands. While this sounds comforting, it is terrifying to wake up and feel the pressure of hands smoothing the blanket over your legs. It is believed to be the spirit of a dedicated maid who is continuing her nightly rounds. She is ensuring the guests are comfortable, but her cold touch drives them to flee in the middle of the night. One of the most chilling encounters involves the ghost of a valet who was rumored to have been murdered over a gambling debt. His body was allegedly hidden in the marsh, but his spirit returned to the room where he served his master. Guests in this particular suite have woken up to see a man standing at the foot of the bed, holding a straight razor. He does not attack, but simply stares with hollow eyes before fading away. The fear he instills is primal, a deep dread that lingers long after the sun has risen. The room often stays cold, even in the heat of a Georgia summer. The grand dining room, which once hosted dinners for presidents and kings, is perhaps the most active location in the entire resort. During the off-season, when the hotel is quiet, security guards dread walking through this vast space. They report seeing the chandeliers swaying gently when there is no air current. The sound of a piano playing faint ragtime tunes drifts from the corner where a grand piano sits. When they investigate, the music stops abruptly, and the piano lid is found closed. It is a spectral performance for an audience of shadows. There is a story of a young couple who visited the resort in the 1950s, long after its golden age had passed. They were exploring the abandoned buildings before the restoration began. They ventured into the attic of the clubhouse and found an old trunk filled with period clothing. As they looked through the items, they heard the distinct sound of a party happening below them. Glass clinking and laughter and orchestral music. When they ran downstairs, the building was silent and empty. They fled the island that night, convinced they had stumbled into a time slip or a massive, ghostly gathering. The restoration of the Jekyll Island Club in the 1980s stirred up the dormant energy of the location. Construction workers reported tools going missing and finding them days later in impossible places. Ladders were knocked over, and fresh paint was smeared by invisible hands. It seemed the original owners were displeased with the changes being made to their sanctuary. The foreman of the project reportedly refused to work alone at night after seeing a floating lantern drift through the hallway of the Sans Souci. The renovation saved the building, but it also woke up the residents. One of the most disturbing aspects of the hauntings is the interaction with modern technology. Cameras often malfunction in specific areas of the resort. Batteries drain instantly, and digital images come out corrupted or filled with strange anomalies. Audio recorders pick up electronic voice phenomena, or EVP, capturing whispers that are not audible to the human ear. Investigators have captured voices saying "get out" or "help me," and even calling out the names of the living staff. The spirits are aware of us, and they are communicating across the barrier. The croquet lawn is the heart of the outdoor social scene, and it is here that the ghost of Edwin Good is sometimes sensed. The son of the notorious J. Good died in a hunting accident nearby, but his spirit prefers the leisure of the lawn. Witnesses have seen a young man in tweed looking for a lost ball near the bushes. When approached, he turns and reveals a face that is pale and devoid of life before vanishing into the shrubbery. The tragedy of a life cut short in its prime resonates in this spot, where the wealthy played games while ignoring the encroaching darkness. The isolated nature of the island amplifies the fear factor. When the causeway was the only link to the mainland, the isolation was complete. During storms, when the wind howls and the rain lashes against the windows, the resort feels like a fortress under siege by the supernatural. Guests huddle in the lobby sharing stories while the lights flicker. It is during these storms that the most intense activity is reported. The electrical energy seems to feed the spirits, allowing them to manifest more fully. Doors slam shut and locked windows fly open, letting the storm inside. There is a room on the third floor of the clubhouse that has such a dark reputation that some staff members refuse to enter it alone. It was the room of a member who committed suicide after losing his fortune in the crash of 1929. The despair in the room is suffocating. Guests who stay there often report nightmares of falling and waking up gasping for air. The mirror in the room is said to show reflections that are not there. People have seen a face looking back at them over their shoulder, a face twisted in anguish and terror. The bell tower of the clubhouse is another focal point for high strangeness. It is generally closed to the public, but maintenance workers have to go up there. They report the feeling of someone pushing them toward the edge. It is an aggressive energy, unlike the passive ghosts in the rest of the hotel. Some speculate it is the spirit of a lookout who fell to his death during the construction. He is angry and wants others to share his fate. The wind at that height screams and carries voices that sound like warnings to stay away. As the night deepens, the encounters become more confrontational. A security guard once reported being physically blocked from entering a hallway by a dark mass that was colder than ice. He drew his flashlight, but the beam could not penetrate the darkness. The mass grew in size until it filled the corridor, and a low growl emanated from it. The guard retreated and refused to patrol that wing for the rest of his tenure. This was not a human spirit, but something older and more primal that has attached itself to the land. The confrontation with the supernatural at Jekyll Island is not always visual. The smell of gardenias often precedes the manifestation of the female spirits. But there is another smell, a scent of decay and wet earth that signals the presence of something malevolent. This odor has been reported in the basement levels of the resort, where the tunnels used by the staff are located. These dark, cramped corridors are a maze of shadows. It is here that people feel a predatory gaze fixed upon them. The feeling is of being hunted by something that dwells in the dark, damp spaces. The aftermath of these encounters leaves a permanent mark on the psyche of the witnesses. Many guests check out early, unable to spend another night in the presence of the unseen. They leave with stories that they are hesitant to share for fear of ridicule. But the online forums and guest books are full of cryptic messages about the things that go bump in the night at Jekyll Island. The resort acknowledges its history, but downplays the horror, focusing on the romance of the era. Yet the staff knows the truth. They know which rooms to avoid and which hallways belong to the dead. The legacy of the Millionaire village is one of excess and exclusivity, and this extends to the afterlife. The ghosts here are not the spirits of the common man. They are the spectral elite, still guarding their enclave from outsiders. They demand the same respect they commanded in life. When you walk the halls of the Jekyll Island Club, you are walking through a crowd of invisible titans. They are judging your attire and your manners, and your right to be in their sanctuary. The air of superiority is as thick as the humidity. Some paranormal researchers believe that the limestone and the water surrounding the island create a natural battery that stores electromagnetic energy. This stone tape theory suggests that the events of the past are recorded in the environment and replayed under the right conditions. This would explain the repetitive nature of some hauntings, like the bellman and the dining room phantom. But it does not explain the interactive spirits like Samuel Spencer or the entity in the basement. There is an intelligence here that defies simple scientific explanation. The lingering dread that follows a visit to Jekyll Island is hard to shake. You leave the island and cross the bridge back to reality, but a part of you remains in the twilight of the resort. You find yourself checking empty rooms in your own home for the smell of cigar smoke. You listen for the phantom footsteps on your own stairs. The island has a way of infecting your dreams, pulling you back to the gilded cage of the dead millionaires. It is a reminder that no amount of money can bribe the reaper. As the sun rises over the Atlantic, the ghosts of Jekyll Island retreat into the shadows of the Spanish moss. The resort comes alive with the bustle of modern tourists, and the horrors of the night are forgotten. But for those who have looked into the hollow eyes of the past, the island will never be just a vacation spot. It is a thinning of the veil, a place where the American dream meets the American nightmare. The whispers of the millionaire ghosts will continue as long as the oaks stand and the sea tides roll. So if you ever find yourself walking the manicured grounds of the Jekyll Island Club Resort at dusk, tread lightly. Do not insult the memory of the founders, and do not linger too long in the shadows of the Sans Souci. You are a guest in their house, and they have never officially checked out. The party is still going on in the ether, and you do not want to be the entertainment. Listen closely to the wind in the trees. It is not just the breeze. It is the collective whisper of 100 restless souls saying welcome to the club.